Thank you all for coming. Before I get on to my main topic, which is about the elderly, I thought it might be good to clarify some definitions about what euthanasia is and what euthanasia is not. And I think confusion around those terms is part of why sometimes this discussion gets so polarized. So euthanasia is basically an action or an omission by which we bring about the death of a person to eliminate their suffering. That's what euthanasia is. Euthanasia is not withholding or withdrawing medical treatment, which we'll talk to in a little bit more detail. Euthanasia is not giving good care to control pain in people who are dying. Those are both very different. So when we think of withholding or withdrawing treatment, normally we want to maintain our health. We want to get better. If we're sick, we go to the doctor. We may not always take the doctor's advice, but we want to do what is best to maintain our health. If we're very sick, sometimes the treatment that is proposed is like more than we can bear. You know, maybe we're offered chemotherapy that's going to make us very, very sick, and we've had it before and we've had enough. Or maybe we're put into an intensive care unit where we don't understand what's going on and everything is very frightening, and there are a lot of things that we don't think that we can handle. So sometimes people in those positions will make the decision that they don't want that treatment anymore, that they want to let their illness run its course, and if they die, well, they're willing to die. We all die sometime, and that is their time. So in a sense, we're weighing what is the benefit of the treatment I've offered versus what is the burden of the treatment I've offered. So is this too much for me for the good that it's going to do to me? And that's something that we're trying to do in medicine all the time, not just the doctors, but the patients, because each patient knows how much they can handle and how important it is for them to get over this illness and so on. So all of that is not euthanasia. That is legal. It's done all the time. That's ordinary decision-making in medicine. It's not always easy, but it's something that happens all the time. Everybody has a legal right to refuse medical treatment at any time. Good control of pain. I'm not a palliative care specialist. Dr. Gagnon is, and he will probably tell you that palliative care specialists can do a very good job at controlling pain. Most of the time, they can get very good control of people's pain and of all of the other horrible things that happen to you when you're terminally ill. There's one other thing, which is physician-assisted suicide, which basically means that the doctor prescribes the drug that the patient then takes home and may or may not use to commit suicide. So that's also that's not legal, just like euthanasia is not legal. So I work in geriatrics. I work in a clinic where people come to me who are sort of at the point of their life where they're starting to fail. Maybe they're losing their memory, or maybe they're losing their autonomy, they're having trouble managing at home, and I deal with different problems around them. And when I hear, as the poll came out the other day, that 70% of Quebecers are in favor of legalizing euthanasia, that really scares me for my patients, because I think, well, what's going to happen to them in all this? Are they going to be sort of forced into it? I think that it puts them at high risk, and I will explain to you why. A couple of years ago, I was at a conference, and I met a young man from the Netherlands. As you probably know, euthanasia has been legal in the Netherlands for about 10 years. It was practiced despite being illegal for at least 20 years before that, and now it's very widespread and very accepted. So this man, his grandfather was in a nursing home. He had all of his marbles. He had some bad arthritis, had trouble getting around. That's why he lived in the nursing home. His wife visited him every day. He was doing not too badly. But he developed a lymphoma, which is a cancer of the lymph glands. And after he developed the lymphoma, the prognosis was not very bad. They expected him to live several years even without treatment of this lymphoma. But he started to go downhill, and the family couldn't figure out why. And he went downhill for a period of about 2 months, and then he died. And then, just before he died, they found out that they were giving him morphine, which he did not need because he had no pain, and they were not giving him enough to eat and drink, and that was why he died, basically. They provoked his death through this treatment. And when they tried to complain to the doctor just said, well, you know, he was old, he was sick, that was what he needed, and that was what we did. And so that is where the mortalities have got to in the Netherlands. If you look at the official statistics from the Netherlands, it doesn't say that because a lot of the cases are not reported. So you don't necessarily see what's really happening. I've been told that a lot of older people in the Netherlands are actually moving into Germany to move into a nursing home because they're afraid that somebody will euthanize them without asking them. So if you think of what happened in those two countries 60 years ago, that's a real ironic twist of fate, let's say. So I think that when somebody moves into a nursing home or gets to that sort of frail stage of their life, people perceive them a little bit differently. I don't think it should be that way. But people perceive them as, instead of being active contributors to society, they see them as sort of being passive, dependent receivers of care. And then you might hear things, well, you know, maybe their life is not so pleasant or not so happy, and it must be hard to live like that. But I think the undercurrent sometimes is, well, you know, their life doesn't have the same value as everybody else's life. And so maybe we'll just allow these things a little bit more easily than we would in somebody else. And sorry, I lost my train of thought, but it won't be long. So, for example, in my clinic, you know, usually whatever problem people are dealing with, whether it's medical, whether it's having to move, things like that, people cope with it fairly well. The families cope with it fairly well. They come to a kind of a decision that suits everybody, and that's what they do. But sometimes I see families where there's a lot of conflict, and you know, they can't agree, and this child says, yeah, mom is fine, she can look after herself, and the other child says, you know, mom is terrible, she's living her memories, she has to move into a nursing home, and they get into big fights, and they can't agree. And sometimes there's a hidden agenda. Sometimes the hidden agenda is money, sometimes the hidden agenda is power, sometimes the hidden agenda is, well, you know, mom always liked you better than me when we were kids. There's all kinds of things that go on in families sometimes, even the best of families. And so I think, imagine if in the midst of all of that mix, which is already hard for everybody to deal with, one of the options was, well, maybe mom would like to ask to be killed because her life is not worthwhile anymore. And that really scares me. Usually the proponents of the right to die, as it's called, are thinking about people who are younger, people who are completely lucid, in unbearable pain, and just can't deal with life anymore, and so they want to be over with it. So aside from what the palliative care people will tell you that we can control that pain, I think that that's a very different population from the ones who I look after, who maybe can be coerced into making a decision that they would not have made otherwise. And I think, you know, if you legalize euthanasia, you're making doctors the only people in the whole of society who have the right to kill other people. And I don't think doctors can handle that power. I was going to tell you a couple of other stories from the Netherlands, but I see that my time is up. So if you want to hear them later, you can ask me. Thank you.